Hello and welcome back, I'm Gabriel, and in this tutorial we are going to add the objects from here to the list over here. So let's jump straight right into it and start working. In the last one we finished by creating this function, so let's create it actually, and we will go to the JavaScript folder and we will create a new one, a new file, and we will call it left panel controller. And the same thing we've done here. Let's copy this. Same template. Let's delete all the content, and from here up, left panel. And here we are going to add this function. And before we are going to even continue, we needed to add to the index.html the controller that we've just added. So you can just drag and drop it over here and it will add it to the list. Let's go back to the left panel controller, and here we are going to add the logic. So what we actually want to do, we want to invoke this function from the up URL, create URL, and giving it a name and the URL, and it actually is going to do all the work for me. And it is going to create a URL object, add the object into the URL list, and create a random ID, and that's it. And it will return the URL object for me so I can continue to work on it. So let's, first of all, we need to take at the value from the URL name and the URL address. To do that, we can simply just go to the ID and extract the name from it. So let's create the name, which is document get element by ID. The ID is the URL name and inner HTML. So actually it's not an inner HTML, rather it's the value. And so I have a name, Control C, Control E. I need the URI, and the same thing we're going to do here. We are going to take the URI object or URL, and now that we have the name and the URL, we are going to create ourselves the URL object by calling this function, giving it a name and URL. This is going to bring back the URL object, which later on we are going to use to add the object to the list. So let's first of all see if the things are working as expected. So let's open the developer tools. Let's go to sources, and left panel controller, and let's breakpoint on line 7 on the URL object. Let's add URL and URL.com. We're going to add, first of all, I can see that I have a URL, and I can see I have a name, which is the same as I selected. And let's try F10, and I have an ID, a URL name, and the URL URI. So far it works, and we will need to add some other stuff as well to the URL object. And let's do it right now. We are going to add this DOM element. We are not going to use it now, but we definitely are going to use it maybe later. So it's always good to have a reference from the object itself to its DOM element. So if we want to maybe later on delete the instance from the list, so we could do some function from the URL object itself that will delete itself from the DOM element. It sounds a little bit complicated, but it is very good to manage your stuff from the objects, and the object will do the work for you instead that you are going to do the work in a low level every single time. So the object knows how to manage itself, how to add itself, how to remove itself. So this is why I want to add this DOM element reference, and later on when we will add the object to the list, we are going to have a reference to itself. So let's continue, and now that we have a URL object, we actually want to add the object to the list. So let's add a new function called add URL to list, and what it's going to have, it is going to get a URL object, and this is a void function. It means that it won't return anything, but it will get the URL object. And the first thing we need to do, we need to create an element, append the element, and attach the DOM to the URI object, which is this little guy over here. So let's do this. Let's call the function and add this URL object. To create the element, we needed to know what we want. So the parent element is going to be this list, right? So let's take this list, and this is the ID, the left panel. This is going to be the parent, and into the parent I want to inject the child, right? The element that I'm going to create. So first of all, I have the parent element. Now inside the parent element, each element that I'm going to create is going to be wrapped in a div container. So let's create it. Var URL container, which is going to be document.create element. Which element do we want to create? It is going to be a div element, and this is the URL container. And now we are going to create the URL element itself. Bear with me, you will understand exactly what I'm going to do. And this is going to be a span element. Okay, now the span element is going to have some stuff. First of all, it's going to have a ID, right? Set attribute. And this is going to be which attribute, ID, and what is the value of the ID. And the ID is going to be URL object dot ID, right? The second one is going to be a draggable and true. Later I'm going to explain why I'm going to add this, but for now just bear with me. And a class now we're going to take the URL container and we are going to append a child, which is the URL element, and we will take the parent element and we are going to append a child to it, which is the URL container. Actually here. And the last part, we're going to take the URL object dot, and this is going to be, let me think, which is going to be the URL container. Let's put the URL container for now. If this is not what we need, then we will remove it. So let's give it a name. And the name is going to be .inner HTML, which is the URL object .name. Let's check it out. url.com, add, and we have the URL. So this is pretty nice, and you can see I can drag it around. This is because I have added the draggable attribute. If I'm going to delete the draggable, you will see that I don't have the option to drag this object around. So now let's just adjust the colors and the position a little bit. First of all, add this padding URL object class to our CSS file, dot, and the name of the class, and we just want to give it padding left of 10 pixels. So now when we will add the object, it is going to actually be padding left. But now I want to also add some, title to this list, but this one is going to be added in the index.html left pane area. We're going to add this little span. It says URL list. And now I'm going to have this one over here, and when I'm going to add the URL, it is going to be underneath and a little bit padding. So, and I want the container also to contain some class over here. So in the container, let's add class list, add, and let's add a class hover color. And the hover color, we're going to go to the main CSS. Let's add the class hover color, and on hover I want to change a little bit the color, the background color, just for now aqua, just to see if it works. Let's add, and you can see when I'm hovering it is actually changing the color. So let's now select a normal color and background color, give it a white by default. Now let's choose something a little bit darker, something like this. That's cool. Let's give it a color, and we also want on click. So if you don't remember the name, you can go to here and active. This is the one we want, active. And active, we want it to be maybe a little bit darker, maybe, perhaps, yeah, something like this. And let's refresh and add, and you can see when I'm pressing it is changing a little bit more the color, and this is the color that you can drag the element itself. I think that's it for now. In the next tutorial we are actually going to handle this part, like this part, and this is the whole concept or the idea of this application, the drag and drop application, so that you can take this from the list, drag it over one of those panes, and it will open something for you. So I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye bye.